Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the Binge Worthy Podcast with myself, Nate, and host G. Oliver.
What up? What up? What up? Stop killing black people.
Basically, so
Just
tonight
go
is
ahead
gonna
and
be a
kick it
little bit
off like
different.
that.
Go ahead.
No, I said we just gonna go ahead and kick it off like that.
We that's I didn't have any. I was trying to think of another way to explain it, and that's just basically where we are. Art imitating life, definitely, as it always has with our films and TV shows and just little doses. But I think where we are right now with our films and TV shows, actually, um, it's directly connected and mirroring where we are in life. It's not the way it used to be where they would just give you little doses of it or it'd be sprinkled in there or it'd be a double meaning. Things are smack dab in our face. And we had another show planned for tonight, and at the last minute I thought it would be um befitting to kind of switch things up. I said to myself I was not going to watch the George Floyd trial.
Have
And
you been watching it?
I haven't been like tuning into it, but everywhere I went where there was a lobby and a TV, it was on.
Yes.
It was really reminiscent of the
OJ.
O.J. Simpson trial, and the Rodney King trial. It was even the Trayvon Martin trial. It felt like we were back in the same space. And I kept saying, I'm not tuning in to watch that. I would tune into YouTube and it'll be the live stream on YouTube. If I rarely watch TV at my house, probably like once or twice a month, I'll turn my actual TV on, and it'll be on. And that's why I don't watch TV because the news is very. I'm not gonna say the news is fake, but it's too sensationalized. And the things that they should be showing us and should be telling us, they choose to show this. And watching bits and pieces of that trial was, again, it put me back to O.J. Simpson trial. It put me back to, I don't remember the Rodney King trial, but Trayvon Martin, where we were all glued to the TV and watching every day. I just couldn't do that this time. Like I couldn't. And the episodes that I did watch, well, I'm not saying episodes, the times that I did get to see some of it, it was a lot of foolishness.
I felt like episodes is appropriate.
And that's what it
It's
feels
almost like a form of entertainment. So
right.
like I haven't sat down to watch any of it.
Mhm.
What I have seen, I've seen very much in the vein of what you just described, where
Mhm.
like I'm in a certain space where it's just on. And
Right.
because I'm occupying that particular space at that particular time, I really
Uh-huh.
don't like have a choice. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when it's on, um, yeah, but like as far as like intentionally sitting down and watching it,
Right.
nah.
Yeah. And a lot of
I can't
people,
believe it's still going on.
well, and it's what is happening is from all the pieces that I'm piecemealing together, it's become a trial on drug abuse. And them using the fact that he was addicted to drugs as the reason for his death versus this man killing him. They've brought in every expert, and even some of the experts that the defense has brought in has clearly said, this was uncalled for. This was not. This was very intentional, and that's what it feels like. And to match that to what we're seeing in our films and our TV shows, and eventually, I'm quite sure playwrights are getting their pen on fire right now, writing. Uh, but it's a horrible time, but an awesome time to make films, uh because the content on one side is just a bountiful
Yeah.
crop of content
It's
right
very
about,
rich.
right, But on the other side, this is the life that we are actually living. They're drawn from real life and where
Mm-hmm.
we are right now. And I'm trying hard not to be a racist black man. I'm trying
Mm.
really hard not to disrespect white people at every turn. And it's difficult for me because I grew up in a space where I didn't have the best relationship with white people. I had a lot of young white friends, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily trust them because they would all slip up and say, use nigga as a term of endearment. And that wasn't my game at that point.
Oh, wow.
So living through racism is strange that I've lived through it, but you don't know you just don't know where a person's coming from. And I used to really be so angry at my grandmother and her siblings for calling white people crackers and being very outwardly aggressive towards white people that came
Mm.
across their path. And I used to, being as though I was raised in, private school, and I tried to be a little bit better than the generation behind me and understand things differently. But it wasn't until I was grown and was really and not even grown, middle school and high school, that I had to deal
Mm-hmm.
with it myself
Yeah.
and really understand where their frustration and anger came from. And I go back a little bit to Reverend Wright, Obama's former uh, pastor,
Yep.
and how they accused him of being this angry black man. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and me not understanding why they would look at him that way, knowing what he had lived through. So, and me watching, I had planned to watch them last week, and I was, trying to watch a little bit at a time, but it's not something that you want to just watch a little bit and walk away. It's something that you
Yeah.
want to just keep like binge watching basically. And as I got into the series, I'm on day number 4, and I think that's episode 3.
Mm.
And this TV show it feels like even though it's a period piece, it really feels like something that could happen today.
Well, I
And
mean, because things, I mean, yeah, no, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead, go ahead.
that's just a testament to how much, how little has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, I think a lot has changed in what is deemed acceptable behavior,
Right,
but the core of the animosity, the emotion, the ignorance, it's all still there.
right, right,
It's all
right.
still there, and I think that's why it makes it hard to watch stuff like that. I saw a lot of the comments about people who, when it came to them and the what is it, Two Distant Strangers,
Uh-huh.
and just how watching stuff like that is just becoming a little bit too much because it strikes so close to home, and then that understanding that it really just signifies how little things have changed
It
despite all of the
Yeah,
time, all of the time that has passed, all of the sacrifices that have been made, all of the fight that that our ancestors engaged in to
mhm.
change things. um and it really does bring it to the forefront when you're watching something that is technically is a period piece, but you understand that that struggle is still something that a lot of people are experiencing to this day.
And understanding that the present day of this, where this piece is taken from, I'm thinking about when my mother was born in 1959,
Mm.
and understanding that this is the time period that this piece uh is in. It starts off a little bit before then,
Mm-hmm.
but then the crust of the story starts in the late 50s, and well, I think in the mid 50s. And
Yep.
it's crazy to be in a space where this is kind of the raging of raging point of the civil rights movement. I'm thinking of how old my parents were, my grandparents living through this. I'm looking at the ages of the people that we see in this, and even some of the subtle details. As a director, I think Peel is, um, I don't know if he's reliving some stuff or he just did a lot of research, but he has a great eye for subtle details. There's a song that's repeated in this, Old Black Joe, and that's a song that's used in Pearly, and it's a really racially driven song, and it's one of those Dixie type songs where white people hold on to it, and it's something that was taught to them and they sang it. But when you hear the song, very reminiscent of the Star Spangled Banner, it,
Mm,
it if they sing a little bit more and actually listen to the words, you'll hear the racism just dripping throughout it.
mm,
And it's hard watching this series, like so many of the other series that have been done over the last year and a half, uh, because it's too real. It's too real, no matter if it's a period piece or not.
mhm.
It's real, and I'm a part of me is angry at white people for turning a blind eye, most of them, and then the other ones holding on to that hateful part of history because that was their heyday.
Mm.
And the idea of making America great again. Like, when was it ever great for everyone? And the
No, it
fact that
wasn't. It never has been.
it
But
never has been.
that's the veil of make America great again.
Right.
They know what they saying, and we know,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no like so for me, there's no mystifying or trying to figure out like why they would do this. Like they mean exactly what they say. Make America
Mhm.
great again because there was a time when it was great to be white in America was great,
Right.
and it still is. However, I think that um, you know something's going on that's making them feel threatened, and they're reacting to that. And it could be a number of things.
Mhm.
It could be the growing the growing influence of people of color in popular culture.
Right.
It could be just the realization that in the next 10, 15 years they're no longer going to be the dominant group in the country, just in sheer numbers. It could be a plethora of different things, but something has triggered that. And it's not a secret. When they say make America great, they hang on stuff like, oh, we talking about our values, but the value is white supremacy.
Right.
The value was that's the value that they want to hold on to.
Now, for the most part, I've really tried hard not to make this series political or overly racially driven or hot topicy. But I purposely today, in me decided to switch up from where we were going to go with a number of biopics that we were going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind tonight us going in a little bit, just going in racially. There are a number of issues that's going on, and I know we're speaking specifically about these two, this one short film, and this one TV mini series. I guess that's happening on Amazon, and but is bringing up so many other different racially driven issues.
Mm.
This show particularly, I'm seeing so many different issues going on. Um, the world of Karen is being represented. The world of the black white male who feels that he has to control everything. um us trying to walk that fine line of moving forward and not wanting to disturb that successful journey, and then us wanting to be a part of their world.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to remember, uh I think it was Malcolm X that said something to the fact of, uh we don't feel like we belong until we move into their neighborhood, or we
Mhm.
don't feel like we've made it until we moved into their neighborhood.
Mhm.
And that idea of leaving behind what we've had to rebuild in their world, to assimilate. um and there's so many different, just like, what was the other, there was another movie, actually two different movies. One series that came out last year, around the Green Book, and then it was another one we talked about in the first season. Um, it was the African couple that moves into the house, and
Okay, so the one that had the Green Book in, that was the show on HBO.
yeah, I cannot think of the name of it to save my life.
Um
And then it was the one where the African couple moves to England,
Lovecraft Country and
Lovecraft Country,
Lovecraft Country and Our House.
in our house. And that this series is kind of a blend of the two of them, where the house becomes this central location for all of the havoc that happens.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, somewhat in this one, less, but it's still a little supernatural activity
Well,
going
there's
on.
a horror element,
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
true horror element, right? Like
yeah,
ghosts, apparitions, seeing things that may or may not be there.
right,
Members of the family being terrorized, and it seems to happen, in some vicinity to the house.
yeah,
And then there is the real life aspect of what's happening, um,
yeah.
which is the trauma that's being inflicted on this family that just moved into this all white neighborhood. So there's kind of like almost like two stories being told. Um, yeah.
He's very good at, not just the pop culture references, but the subtle
Well, you mean
element.
she? This is not a Jordan Peele production.
Well, I keep saying he,
Yeah. This
but
is actually Lena Waithe is the
right,
executive producer of this one.
right.
Um
But the writer, I can't. I'm trying to remember the writer's name. Writer of them. And I'll come up. I'll find that. But it just has so many subtle, like, references to
mm,
other pieces that deal with race. And
mhm,
it's for me, I want to see more of this. One, because I think it's going to give younger people more options in terms of them learning about our history and
mhm,
severity of where we are right now, and the dangers of overlooking history, because they will certainly repeat themselves. And I had a small group, that I meet with on Sundays, of young men, and this, I gave them this assignment to watch this, or start watching it rather, so we can talk about it in our group on Sunday. And
mhm,
a lot of them didn't even catch the fact that this wasn't something that was current, meaning presence. So they thought that this was something that was set in today's world. And that was just
mhm,
basically what they were seeing happening. And I was saying it's dangerous for us to, one, as Black people, be ashamed of our history and seek to erase it, because then we'll surely repeat it, or overlook it, or push it away, or
mhm.
not think of it, because we will definitely repeat history if we don't take hold of it and pay attention to it now. But it was
So
just
I've
crazy.
so
Go ahead.
what do you think about all of the folks? Like, there's been a lot of conversation with this one in particular around like people are refusing to watch it. I've seen a
I'm one of them.
lot of posts. I've actually commented on a few.
Mhm.
where people were expressing just like, you know, the idea that the I guess it's the commodification of black trauma is how a lot of
Yeah,
people are seeing these the a lot of films that are coming out that are telling our stories, and
yeah. Because it's hard. It's
it's
hard.
in yeah.
As I said to you in season one, the whole premise and the idea for this show coming up was because there were certain shows, certain films that I did not want to see. It was certain things that I still have yet to see. I one of my friends was upset that I haven't watched Fruitville Station yet, and it's
Hmm.
just certain things as a black man that I don't want to see right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
And I may catch it on the fly, or the purpose of me creating this platform was to force me to watch a lot of those things,
Hmm.
because I felt like I was detaching myself from the craft that I studied, in terms of researching and looking and see what's out there, and learning different storytellers and
Hmm.
learn about different storytellers. But it is very difficult and triggering. And I know we talk about those words and how people overuse them, but it's very triggering to watch things like this.
Hmm.
This series, the first couple episodes that I've watched, it's hard to watch somebody who, for all intents purposes, is a strong individual, smart, intelligent, not have control over their environment
Mm.
or the environments that they walk in. I'm thinking about the episode with the father in this series. And
Hmm.
what I did was I just took a picture of all of them, and because it was crazy, they didn't have one central image of it. I guess that's how they do marketing now. But the father was called into his supervisor's office, and it was like the guy didn't have any remorse for him. He didn't have any, like, concern for him until he spoke about the dog. And that's a very typical thing that we hear about white people. They care more about an animal's life than they do a black life. And he was brought to some phony fake tears over the absence of his dog. He couldn't even connect to the man's loss of his dog
Hmm.
over his dog.
Yeah,
And it was just issues like that. Uh, this
this show hit a lot of beats.
Well,
It hit a lot of beats.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
for all that was done, that was like in your face and very obvious.
right,
So much was done in those quiet moments.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I thought I watched it. I binged it, and it was incredibly tough to watch.
yeah,
And you haven't finished it yet.
right,
But I feel like I got it like early in the show.
mm-hmm,
And I think that when it's all said and done, I think people will look back on them as a brilliant piece of horror. Um, because for me, it really was a commentary on the trauma that we sometimes inflict on ourselves
mm-hmm,
be due to our need to be near white people, to be in their spaces, defining ourselves or creating this idea of success within ourselves that's based on our proximity to them.
mm-hmm.
And that's really what I got from it. And horror in particular has always been this really kind of like veiled way of talking about larger subjects. Some of the greatest
But
horror
it's
movies
just
of the
something
time.
about the way that they, and I wanna shout out Pale for kind of igniting that fire in a bigger way. It's been something like
Yeah.
that going on, but he did it in a way where it was so blatant. There was no way that you can misread this or
Hmm.
misinterpret it at all.
Yeah. And I think that what separates us from them and like Get Out is that it's the long form storytelling, right? So
Yeah.
you can dig a little deeper, right?
Uh-huh.
So for as great as like Get Out and Us were, them is always going to have the advantage in my mind because
Mhm.
it didn't have to wrap itself in 90 minutes to 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? It automatically gets that time to breathe and really kind of delve deep into some of the themes and the ideas that they're trying to convey. And that's really what's kind of set it apart for me. Because it goes deep. And I mean,
Yeah.
in a full fleshed out story kind of way, because like even the ending was just as powerful as everything else that was going on, right? Like the way it ended. And I'm not going to speak too much on that because I know that you haven't finished it yet.
I
Um
mean, where I'm at, what initial two things caught my attention. One, it was the older white lady singing "Old Black Joe" in the very
mhm,
beginning of it, which made me think of Pearlie. And then the young lady, the two daughters are. I want to see more of them, but this young lady, in particular, she is a dead ringer for my niece.
mhm,
So watching her storyline develop was heartbreaking to me because I would kill somebody if they treated my niece this way. And I
mhm,
can't really say I would do that for many people in life, but I saw my niece in her so much.
mhm,
And it just, I like how they are casting real people in this. And I'm
mhm,
not saying somebody who has had success isn't a real person, but it often distracts you from the story when there's a face that you've seen already
mhm.
or you've seen them in everything.
Oh, the family, the actors who portray it, phenomenal
Right.
from
Yeah.
front to
Right.
back, beginning to end,
Right.
absolutely phenomenal.
And it's so subtle. It's not, I mean, the dad and the mom had the biggest uh storyline so far, but the daughters kind of well round it
Mhm,
in terms of the subtlety of the storyline and how it's going. And I'm not a big fan of Lena Waithe. I'm not, because I think she does too much
mhm,
and trying to be, edgy. And I know the person who wrote this, she kind of collab with her on this project, but I like the rawness of it. I'm tired of seeing stuff that is innuendo or layered, or I'm tired of seeing that because I believe it's giving white people the permission to be, oh, well, I don't know what they're meaning. I don't understand that. And no, this is exactly what we're saying.
mhm.
Just like we see ourselves and people we know in this, it is very apparent to them that they see themselves in this. They have to see themselves in this.
If they watching it,
They watching it
because
though, and I know they watch.
that's been a topic of conversation as well,
Mhm.
as to whether or not white audiences are actually tuning in for this type of
But
show.
they watch our stuff. They watch it. Trust and believe. They watch it. From the very ratchet stuff that they watch on reality TV to the seriousness, all everything in between. They're watching. They don't comment on it,
Do
and
you
they
think that
act
it's
as if they don't.
difficult for them to watch something like this because the racism in the show is so blatant?
I don't think it's difficult for them
It's
at
so
all.
in your face.
I don't think it's difficult for them at all. I think the difficulty comes in them uh, allowing themselves to have open conversations about it or joining in our conversations on it. That I know they're still watching. I notice when I post certain things, and I'm trying to fine tune that thing of how to post and create like really provocative conversation
Mhm.
and not just responsive conversation. And I'm trying to fine tune that on my personal page and then trickle that over to all the other pages that I have. But I've noticed like it's certain conversations they won't deal with, and other conversations they'll dig into.
Mm-hmm.
When you begin to speak blatantly and directly about race relationships and how they have not changed, that's what, and I think that's why a lot of storytellers started using period pieces to tell stories because it gave people a level of comfort in talking about it versus
Mm-hmm.
right now. And a lot of people just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. I remember quitting an organization uh, right at the opening of this, well, during this pandemic, the beginning of it, because I saw where it was. I saw what I was going to be used as, and I was tired of working for organizations trying to fit in and work into this diversity field. I
Mm-hmm.
got tired of doing that. You know, even amongst our own companies that we developed, I got tired of fitting in, you know, and trying to, you know, be nice, dependable Nate for the white artist or the white art organization. So I
Mm-hmm.
could get my work done and I can be successful because some of the things that we see, even in this piece, we see how, you know, him trying to get himself together and not go back to where he was is interfering with what he personally feels
Mm-hmm.
and him being able to protect his family. But at the same time, if we protect our family, then harm will definitely come our way. So, you know, is how do we attack this issue? Do we be blatant and direct, or should we work, you know, undercover and make change happen in small little bite-sized forms? You know, who's to say what's the best way of doing it? But you know, we all want to come home at night and be alive in the morning. Uh, but it's hard watch. It's very triggering, you know, to watch this stuff. It's very triggering, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
I forced myself to do this series because it forced me to watch stuff that I was uncomfortable watching, um, and you know, just see what other people are watching and what they're willing to talk about. Was it anything in this series that stuck out to you, or not necessarily?
Oh my God. That so outside of the obvious, the acting I thought was phenomenal across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Um like the white folks you find yourself hating for real.
Uh huh.
Um the there was so much to identify with the black family.
Yeah.
The two adult leads incredibly strong. I mean, like just incredibly powerful performances,
Mm,
and then complementary powerful performances from the two young ladies that played the children. I thought the acting, particularly from the main characters, was outstanding. Shout out to the musical director for this show
yeah. Yeah.
because yo, like all of these songs are from the period,
Not
or
all of them. Some of
around
them.
the period. Most of them not. There were probably a few that were off kilter, but the way that they were used within the show,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
They just hit different watching them in the context of the show, and you'll see more of that as you get further along in the series, Nate.
Yeah.
Because it's really it was one of the standouts for me for the show itself.
Well, and that's
Um,
a trend that's happening now that we've seen in the last couple of years, where they're trying to reintroduce our music to our work
mhm.
because for a long time we would
Well,
separate
it
out.
lines up better. I mean, it there's a synergy there.
Yeah.
You know, now that we're starting to see more of ourselves, more of our stories, and particularly when it's done by like our people,
Right.
it makes sense that our music would play a big role in that. So there is that synergy. But this one, I think them stands out for that. Not to say that, not to take anything away from what's been done before, but the music selection and just how they're used within the context and the narrative of the show were just outstanding.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're gonna have to have a follow up because I would like we got to continue this once you finished it. Because I feel like I don't want to say too much, but I think we could have a more round, like when we can have a spoiler free discussion about it. But I respect very deeply everyone who has taken the stance of like not watching Black trauma in film or in that medium in general.
And I
But
want
I would
people to not.
caution.
I want people to not bash people for making that decision, because we have to
Well, I haven't heard
realize
anybody bashing anybody about it. It's just,
it's
I
still
mean,
a little
people are
bit of that.
strong in their opinions. I feel like the people who watched it, like myself, like I watched it. So all I really have to talk about is how I felt about it, like what I thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
The folks who are taking a hard line and declaring that, you know, they're not watching it. I think that they're standing on their decisions, but I don't feel, I'm not, like, I haven't felt bashed by anything that I read for my decision to watch it. Right. Like I haven't seen anything yet that would make me feel like, you know, someone's trying to make me feel some type of way
No,
because I decided to watch it.
The opposite way.
Okay, and I haven't seen any of that either.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody yet post or like in at least on my timeline, I can say. I don't know everything, but on my timeline, I haven't seen anyone who's like bashing the people who choosing not to watch it. Like I respect why, because I understand why people wouldn't watch that. I would caution people though to just consider that while watching that trauma is very, very triggering, and it has the potential to put some of us in some spaces that we may not want to be in. Like,
but you have to understand,
these are our stories. Unfortunately, for better or for worse. Like,
yeah, but
these are the stories that have kind of defined our existence in this country so far.
So in the beginning, around like Trayvon Martin, a lot of the stories that were coming up from cops killing people, they were old stories. A lot of them were old stories that were people were reposting and finding clips and resharing. But we have gotten into a point over the last 5 or 6 years where life is definitely imitating art, and art is definitely imitating life. And then you hear it on the news, and then one after another court case, and somebody else has been killed. And you know, now we're dealing with trans lives and black lives,
we get to see it now.
And it's seeing it, but we are living it. You can't turn on your TV. You can't flick on Facebook. You can't do anything without it being in your space. And I'm not saying we should stop making these types of scripts, but what is happening is people.
It's an onslaught on the sentence you're right. I mean, like between what's happening in the real world and then what's happening in
it's like real life
where we are in Hollywood right now, there is this very odd like relevance between the two, because these things are happening in real time, and the coupling of the two is definitely can be an assault on the senses, on the heart, on the mindset. You're right. I
have not chosen to watch, and little by little, I would watch something when it moved me to watch it, or when I had a space where I felt like, okay, this has been a good news week, been kind of slow. Let me put a dose of it in here. But you have, I've really cautioned people to really think about the stuff that they're watching. Stop trying to just be entertained, and realize that a lot of this stuff is very entertaining, but it's hard on your psyche, and it's very hard mentally to filter a lot of this stuff out. It's like drinking a lot, and you haven't had any water or anything anything to eat, you are damaging your insides and you're making it hard for your body to flush any of those toxins out. And the
Mm-hmm.
same thing happens with the stuff that we're watching. We have to be very mindful. I'm not saying ban it or stop making it, because it's a great time for black voices, black stories, black entertainers, black directors, so on and so forth. It's a great time. But we really have to figure out ways to, okay, can we bring a little coming to America too in it and just put a little bit of funny in it, or and I'm talking about in terms of people choosing what they're watching. Create something, because
Oh yeah, you gotta have that balance.
right, even with the stuff that was coming out this time, like it was one heavy hitting storyline after another with TV and film, and then all the streaming networks. It was just one heavy story. So coming to them, I have been reading up on it and doing like the little research on it in terms of what the story was going to be, but I wasn't prepared for the in your face
Mm.
of it all. This one in particular didn't have a lot of trailers, like a lot of the other stories that were being made. And so I didn't get to see any trailers, so I didn't see.
Yeah, it kind of just dropped.
Yeah,
Like I feel like I saw a trailer and it was like coming out like
but that was months ago.
the following Friday, and I
Right,
was
right,
like, oh,
right,
okay, that looks
right.
interesting, and I really didn't know what you know. It looked very Jordan Peele
Right.
style.
Well, I think with the
It was
streaming
it was
networks, they
very
don't have
us.
to do a lot of
No,
marketing
they
as they
don't. They
would if
don't.
it was in the movie theater,
You're
where they're
right.
trying
They
to
don't.
get you to come out. Because all I got to do is just go to Amazon and see it. And
Mhm.
there's still other options. They don't even have to go to Amazon necessarily. But um, this was in where I'm at in the story so far. You know, I'm always thinking ahead, like what is going to come the next season. That's where my mind always is. Figuring out where do we tell this story? Should they go to the next decade with this story? You know,
Yeah.
because what is interesting is, and most people will
And
probably
it's billed
overlook.
as an anthology series.
Right, right.
So that makes it that and a lot of and I was reading up on so a lot of the people involved in this, like
Hmm.
a lot of the producers came from like one of the guys who's actually from Baltimore.
Hmm.
He worked on like the OJ Simpson show.
Okay.
So for FX did, what was it called? I think it was like True Crime, like American Crime Story,
Hmm. Hmm.
by way of American Horror Story, right? So he worked on that. He worked on a couple seasons of that. He worked on American Crime Story, and the first season of that was OJ. The second season, I think, was Versace.
Yeah.
He had worked on those two. And then as I was reading through some of the other executive producers, they had also worked on some of those seasons of some of
Overlapping
those shows. So
project.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
overlapping. So this one, when I was reading up on it, it actually is billed as an anthology series, which leads me to think that if it does come back for a second season, it might actually do something similar to what you just suggested, right? Like
Hmm.
it will probably be some like a lot of the same actors playing different roles
Just like what you
in a
call it?
whole
What
new
is it?
story. Yeah, just like American
American
Horror
Horror Story.
Story.
Yeah,
Yep.
go into a different space with it, or like
hmm
August Wilson did, where if at the meat of it, the crust of it, the stories are connected.
hmm
Whether it's a character here or a character there, because what's interesting about this one is it's taking place in a Compton that we don't know nothing about. Like,
Right.
what,
Right.
like the to even now this forces me to do, and I'm quite sure Compton was very white. It was a development, like
hmm
many places were at its origin. So what would that look like? And I don't know if you've ever seen beneath his house or beneath his room. Is it beneath his room? Where it talks about, it's like I think 15, 20 years into the future after
hmm
raising in the sun. So they move they move into the house, but then 20 years later where is the house now? What does the neighborhood look like? So on and so forth. And I
Mm-hmm.
would love to see this series travel and either end up or at some point become what we knew was like that 90s and 80s Compton,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out how to get us from where the story is now to what present day is. I would love to be on that journey and just see that neighborhood slowly change.
Yeah, that would be
Because if you
interesting.
think about California, that's how their hoods look.
Mm-hmm.
Their hoods look like a development that
Oh
just
no, like you,
was
like
old.
yo, when I lived in LA, like I was in the middle of a whole like gang neighborhood and didn't even realize it
Yep, yep.
because their hoods look
Suburbs.
early Randallstown.
Yeah,
You
yep,
know what I'm saying?
yep,
Like
yep.
it has a very, like, coming from the East Coast, from Baltimore, it has a very urban feel to it. Like
Hmm.
they all look like, the counties.
Right.
And so yeah, like I don't know where they're gonna go with it the next
At least
season,
this
but
place. That's what it
I
is.
don't know if you gotten to let me see. You may not have gotten to the episode, but it is an episode where there's a really interesting conversation, which really is just like the it's a scene that like breaks down redlining and
Hmm.
how it works from the inside out.
You can talk about
And
it because I'm gonna have to
oh,
watch
okay,
it a couple times
so
myself. So
well, no, yeah, it's a scene between the woman who sold them the house
yeah.
and then and her bosses,
Hmm.
and they're talking about, like this, like it almost, you almost realize that while on the one side of it you've got this black man who decides to move his family into this neighborhood as a sign of status and moving up and all of these
Hmm.
things, and he feels like he's breaking a barrier, he feels like he's, making this leap forward, but then you find out that all of that shit is by design,
Yeah.
that the intention was to move black people in an effort to make money by selling essentially like subprime loans.
Right.
And yeah, so
That was the whole premise behind Raising in the Sun. They knew that this was a black family.
mhm,
They knew it was a black family. Come on, how many times do you buy a house sight unseen? Like how
mhm,
many times does that happen? Or how many times do
right,
developers let you buy a house
mhm,
sight unseen? Or they haven't seen you yet.
mhm.
So when she first saw them, she wasn't amazed. She wasn't, I'm sure they told her that they were black. I'm sure
Oh,
they
she knew they were black.
right.
Yeah, she
So,
knew they were black.
that that's
And
how
what
the
she
people
didn't tell them was the makeup of the neighborhood. She didn't tell them about the covenant, right, which barred black people from living in the neighborhood.
right,
Um,
right.
yeah, but there's a really, and I think if you're on episode, you said episode 3,
Yeah,
so
I'm
it's probably coming up in like the next episode, that
but I
conversation.
figured that was going to be a part of the storyline as well because
Mm-hmm.
it was heavily, even with the graphics in the very beginning, the redlining and
Yeah. Yep.
when the wife goes to see the family, you
Mm-hmm.
know, them talk how they talked about that neighborhood, how the police officer spoke about the neighborhood, it this is very interesting. I would have never wanted to be. Now, I've gone to school and I was one of only a handful, but I don't think I would have been mentally ready to live in a neighborhood like that. Like, I just
Mm-hmm.
don't, you know, our neighborhood was pretty diverse, but it was never to that degree. I don't think I have the mother or the family that would have been able to deal with that the way they are dealing with it or choosing to deal with it. And that's why I'm saying there's a lot of issues that I can tell will be talked about in this, and it's just hard knowing that our parents lived through this,
Mm-hmm.
and then we are still living through a form of that is still like this. I in the midst of this, I was thinking about moving, and I am moving, but I was thinking about moving somewhere else and finding another apartment. And there was this one apartment that I love this apartment from the photos, and I had been in the building before, so I knew how the building was. And I was just one particular young lady. I was trying to lease out the apartment, and she was the landlord, and she would, every time I would respond, it wouldn't be available, and then I would see it, like, disappear from the listings, and then a couple weeks later it'll be back on,
Mm.
with new pictures, and I would respond again, and she would say, "Oh, we have already," and I was like, "This the same damn apartment." And I came out and said it to her. I said, "Is there a problem with me? Because you haven't even met me or gotten any of my credentials or, any information on my work or anything for you to say no to me. And I know
Mhm.
my page doesn't look like irresponsible Nate. Like, I purposely keep my profile page clean that way because everybody looks at your page,
Mhm.
you know, and to understand that we still are going through that. I live in Charles Village, and you would think that this neighborhood is very liberal but it still has, neighborhood associations that are really one-sided, you know,
Mhm.
who care more about a bike lane than they did, the health and wellness of the people who also live in this neighborhood or the adjacent neighborhoods, and we still live in that space where people don't want you to live in their spaces.
Mm.
And to understand that, like, that's crazy that we still are living in a red lined community. Baltimore is definitely red line, and it's so micro right now. It's so
Mhm.
micro that you wouldn't even really, it wouldn't be visible to you.
You don't know until you know.
Right,
Like
right.
it's not something that's so obvious to you. Like it's not until something happens, and like when it happens, it almost catch. I think I can imagine for someone experiencing some type of like act or predicament that makes you just go, "Whoa, hold up!"
Yeah.
This like
But you gotta
I
really
feel
be
like it
paying
would be like
attention
you had to be
sometimes.
paying attention, and it's
Yeah,
probably something that would really kind of throw you out of your zone for a minute. Like, whoa,
yeah.
like this, that's crazy.
I do that. Cause sometimes I shop out in Hunt Valley because I like the Wegmans supermarket. Because I'm trying to eat differently, so I go there, or I'll get the delivery site to bring it to me because they just have more of a variety of healthier food.
Mm,
And I remember recently going out there and just being amazed at all of the options, like just options for simple things. Like, it's a whole, like, huge section just for yogurt. They got probably like over 100 different types of yogurt,
mm,
and coming back to the city, you know, it's like maybe 5 or 6 different options.
yeah.
And just to understand the difference, and why wouldn't people want to live in that neighborhood? Why wouldn't people want to live in that neighborhood? Coming from where you coming from, and the period that this piece would be in, the neighborhoods, having smaller markets. It's like a stop shop and save compared to a Wegmans or Whole Food or something like that. Like, it's completely different. And why wouldn't people want to, like, break that barrier and move out in that area? But how welcome would they be? Like, what would you be willing to put up with just to have 100 options for yogurt?
Mm,
What would you be willing to deal with? And some people, we've heard in stories and movies and plays what people really was willing to deal with just to have better options for their children, or just to have better living arrangements or better home space.
and
But
I'm
this
sitting here like, ain't yogurt? Like, did you really need 100 options of
Yeah,
yogurt?
but they got the organic, they got the non-dairy, they got the vegan. I mean, and I'm being very facetious and speaking about it, but that is still amazing. And I've lived in nice neighborhoods, but it's still, when you go and you have those types of options, it makes you understand why white people are the way they are, because they have 100 different options for everything versus we have apples and oranges, or in the summertime, peaches or plums, it
They
is
out there with the jackfruit
right,
and
like
and the
in the market,
avocados.
and not just in a can, but the fresh one, like just brought from the farm fresh,
Mhm.
And it's not even a jealousy thing. It's just, why wouldn't you want more for yourself? But just it seems like every film that deals with race, you always hear a conversation from the white people about how they've built all of this, and what we're like in this one, they were speaking about at their neighborhood association meeting, their homeowners association meeting, you know, my father built this neighborhood. And what were they doing at the time? What were they, porters and maids and mammies?
Mhm.
They relegate us to the smallest micro, you know, position in
That's because
this
they didn't.
country.
That's because it's true. They didn't build it for us. Like
Well,
they didn't
but
build. They didn't
they didn't
build any
build
of
it.
their things. They didn't build any of
Yeah.
that. They didn't build anything with the intention of like having to share it.
Right, right. So that then becomes the whole. So, and once I've seen it, because I'm gonna have to watch this at least twice, because I already saw things that was like, okay, now I gotta go back and watch that. But
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna be able to do that, bro. Like
well,
I
that's
haven't. I wanted to because I knew we were gonna be talking about it. I was going to rewatch it, right?
mhm,
Like purely for this second time. Now I'm just watching it for
right,
from like a researcher's perspective, right?
right.
And I couldn't do it.
It's not getting easier. Yeah,
I didn't even try. Like I
yeah.
didn't even try. It was like I thought about it and I was like,
Nah,
nah, I don't think I need to see that again.
but
You know what
that's
I mean?
but
Like
just
as
understand how
phenomenal
triggering
as
it
I
is to
thought it
people.
was, and you're talking to somebody who really, like I thought it was really good. I thought it was phenomenal, even.
But some of this stuff is
But to
getting
go
too
back
real.
and
It's
watch
too
it,
real life.
to watch it a second time, now I'm gonna need some time in
Yeah,
between. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like I
I get
finished
it.
it when I watched it in one sitting. Like I binged it. And what did I watch after that day? I had to go watch the little comedy on Netflix,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
superhero
Flex your
one with
powers a little bit.
yeah, with Octavia Spencer and
Oh,
Melissa
Melissa
McCartney.
McCartney. Oh yeah,
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 I had to
yeah,
go
yeah,
watch that. So
yeah,
it was kind of like remember when we talked about what was it? Malcolm and Marie. And I told you
yeah.
I had to go and watch Tiffany Haddish's comedy special
And that's what I
afterwards.
was referring
Like that's
to in the
that's how
beginning.
that
So when we
balance.
first start talking, that's what I meant. We have to, as the viewers, we have to become very selective as to what our schedule of programming
Yeah,
will be.
yeah. Balance
Because
is important.
right, because I
Balance
see
is
you can
important.
tell even on social media when this stuff is airing and when it's coming out, and
Hmm.
I think now it's tougher because you can sit down and turn on Amazon and watch it from beginning to end of the series, where before we were on like a weekly schedule where
Hmm.
we had 7 days in between or 6 days in between the next
Yeah,
episode. So it wasn't as like, oh my God, like so now you find yourself if you watch this over the weekend, that next week will be a pissy for you.
yeah.
Versus,
If you don't have that, if you
being
don't have that balance.
right.
If you don't
And
have that balance,
you
yeah,
have
because
to
I'm
schedule
very good
yourself.
about the balance, and because I love
Mhm.
film so much, like
Yeah,
I typically will watch films that I know are going to move me in some way,
yeah,
and if it moves me too far in one direction, right, like I
yeah,
know that I got to come back and okay, now I got to watch something lighthearted. I got to watch something that's going
yeah.
kind of counterbalance
For
what I
me,
just
I'd be like, you know what? The day is a day for me to make jewelry. I can't watch nothing else. I'll listen to
yeah,
music.
yeah,
You have to. I think right now we have, because we're living in a very sensationalized, microwaved society, and we have to begin to relegate and really put ourselves on a schedule. because it's too many people being depressed. It's too many people dying from depression or stuff that didn't have to be, where your emotions or your feelings got you to that place, because you're getting sick based off of what you're absorbing. And a lot of that isn't just food and alcohol and drugs. It is the programming you're putting into your mind, because that's setting
Oh
you
yeah,
up.
well, what you watch, what you
Mm-hmm.
see, what you
Yeah.
listen to, is just as important. And too much of any one thing is going to be
Right.
bad for you.
And we were talking a little bit about, this season. And that was one of the reasons why I really, really switched directions this season, because I felt like a lot of us have been in the house for a year and absorbing a lot of news and social media and, headline stories, and we needed something different, and
Yeah,
I
well,
wanted
if you
this
watching
season.
the news all day, you definitely need to
Yeah.
unplug for a little while.
And just look backwards a little bit, and kind of wet your palate, so to speak. So we're not so, okay, this movie Us just came out, now Them is out, and now, it was just one thing after another, and I was like, last season was just, it was you picking things and me picking things, and we were trying to stay current. I was like, mentally I need a break. One, I've been in the house for a year. Two, I haven't been able to really be active in my craft. So there was no rehearsals, there was no classroom. So I needed something different. So that, if people look at this season, comparing it to the first season, it is drastically different, because I needed a break. Personally, I
It's gonna get
personally needed a
drastically
break.
different for season 3.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
man, we ain't gonna have time to be sitting at home watching a whole bunch of stuff. We're gonna have to cut this down to like 3 projects per episode.
And I tried to give
Yeah.
a little bit examples of each one, so we could figure out what comes next. But I'll say to be determined. In terms of this piece, Them, and we'll definitely pick this one back up. But the next piece, or the last piece, is this short film. Was it Two Distant
Two distant
Strangers?
strangers.
Now, I had
Sneak
heard.
Netflix, you little sneaky bastards.
Right. I had thought about watching this, but on the other podcast that I do, the We Are You Morning Show, one of the other co-hosts suggested that I watch it, and I was like, oh, another police brutality. I don't feel like it. But and researching it, it had a real Groundhog's Day type of feel to it. It had of course, the police brutality aspect to it. But then it had this other dimension where at the end of the film you realize this police is in on this shit. He understand, he's
So
going through it at the same time this young man is going through
so let me tell you how it got me.
it.
Because I didn't see no advertising for it. I
It
hadn't
wasn't.
heard
It wasn't.
nothing about it. I hadn't seen none of the commentary. It just popped up on Netflix one day, and we were sitting here. We were like, oh, and then we read the description, and I'm like, oh, this some old sci-fi Groundhog's Day type shit. We about to watch this,
Right.
and it's a little short. You know what I'm saying? And I'm really
It was
starting
like
to
a little over
appreciate.
half an hour.
Yeah, I'm really starting to appreciate, because they've been putting out shorts here and there a lot now. And the other place that does it is Disney Plus. Disney Plus has like they got like a whole line of shorts that I've been watching with the kids that it was really good. And I was like, all right, so we gonna get into this. And like it was like, oh, when I realized what was happening. Yeah, when I realized what was happening, I was like, oh Lord, not another one. Yeah. And but then it got interesting, because it plays with this idea that, okay, so this is just somehow like this is either really, really bad luck on his part, or there's something, like going on here. Like, how is he gonna get out of this? And when we get to the end, and like that's the shit that I think is really, really hard for white people to like accept and confront. Right.
that they
So essentially, this white cop was stuck in the time loop with him.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
instead of trying to figure out how the hell to get out the time loop, he had actually, he was cool. He was taking his enjoyment
Yeah.
out of this.
But
And
he was acting as if he wasn't in it also.
right.
And that was the part that pissed me off. It really pissed me off. Because this young man he had lived this 100 times over.
Mm-hmm.
And he had put in his mind, and probably based on what his personality was as a character, I'm going to get through this. But he never would have thought that the man was in on it too.
No.
That
Like when
was the last thing.
You stuck in a time loop. So when he went and was like, let me just go talk to dude. I was like, oh, okay, wait a minute, maybe we're gonna get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
And I don't think any of the times did he ever kill the police officer?
No, I don't think
and
so.
That may have been in my mind. I kept saying that's how he's gonna get out of this. He has to kill that police officer, which is crazy. But we've seen a couple different people try this Groundhog's Day premise. The original one, I think, I love the original one. Then we just saw what's the Marlon Wayans try it, and I can't remember. It was another movie that was like that Groundhog's Day type of feel. But this was really turning it on its head to include someone else on it.
Yeah,
like that was the thing that took this from okay, this is another installment, another adaptation. But this turned it all the way on its head, and for him to reveal this to like the audience, like that was crazy.
Yeah,
because he was like, well, we just gonna keep trying this, keep doing this. And it really was different. I love watching him like go through these emotions and try something different. It at some point I thought like that first ride ride home, I thought that was gonna be the one. Okay, this is where it's gonna end. But
that is where it ended.
Well, no, because that wasn't the first time that they took that ride home.
No, yeah, it was.
It was?
Yeah. The first time, the first time he talks to him and he lets him go, and something else happens, and I'm assuming that he in this. It seemed like what they were insinuating that something else happened, and then he got hit in the crossfire. Yeah, it had not like after him and the officer talked.
Because you hear another,
and then you hear something else go on, and then you see him wake up. Yeah. And then the second time he has the conversation with him again, and he's like, "Yo, why don't you just give me a ride home?" And it was after he got out from the ride home and is walking away that you get the big reveal.
Now this is something. It took me away from the issue and kept the issue relevant, because this is an issue that happens. Like, no matter what happens, there will always be an officer like him that will always choose to just hold on to the hate and the ignorance and the bad behavior. But it was a different perspective on the conversation. It wasn't just about the heated fire between the two opposing forces, but solutions. This felt more solution based. Like, what can we do? Even though he talked about this being his 100th time doing this and going through this, but it made me realize that there are solutions. So why not look for the solutions rather harping on?
But then there's the harsh reality, which we saw at the end, and the harsh reality is that to say that there's solutions, that means that there's this problem, right? Like this genuine problem, right, between young black men and police officers. But the reality is there is no genuine problem between young black men, black people, and police officers. The problem is that
the individual.
the individual and the institution. The institution itself is seathed in white supremacy and a hatred of black skin.
Mm-hmm.
And we refuse to deal with that. We refuse to deal with the history of the very idea and notions of police departments. Like, they didn't just spring up like, oh, we need a public safety force. Let's hire people, train them, and call them police. And then somehow it just went bad somewhere between that group and African Americans or people of African descent.
The
That's
origin
not
of
what happened. The origins themselves are steeped in the idea of the control and the subjugation of black bodies.
Yeah.
It always comes back to that, right? Like, Derek Chauvin is on trial. You can argue it. You can have a 15, 18, 30-day trial. But we all saw, but what we all saw was that at the end of the day, when he was performing his duties of a police officer, he was performing it on something other. He did not see or treat that man like a human being.
I mean,
George Floyd was not a human being to him.
Right. This case is no different than any of the other cases that we've seen. I think the only difference in this one is we are seeing the tactics being used. All the other ones, it wasn't able to do it the same way they're doing it this time.
The last five to five, would you say earlier, 5, 6, 7 years of like what we've been seeing is because it's all been captured on candid camera.
Yeah, but I think each time the police slipped up more and more. You know, we went from
I don't think
only hearing audio to now there were at least 7 or 8 different video cameras being used. Including the body cams and the
my guy. It don't even matter. It don't even matter what it is. None of this stuff is new. None of it. None of it's new.
It's not. But I'm just saying.
I have a thing when I'm by myself. I have a thing when I'm by myself. I sing. Like, I sing and I dance to music and all that stuff. It's not something that you will ever see me do in public. It's not. If you put cameras around my house and audio equipment around my house, right? Like, you would be shocked and surprised, Nate. You be like, wait a minute, he be doing that?
Like the type.
He be doing that?
You seem like the type.
But the truth of the matter is, I've been doing this since I was a child. Since I was a child, this is like part of my regular behavior pattern. And the only difference is now you get a window into it because there's audio and there's video. None of this stuff is new. This has been happening to black people all over the United States.
My point is the sophistication of us being able to see it in real time, being able to see it. You know, all the other ones were videotapes. I think by the time we got to Philando Castile, it was a Facebook Live. And then by the time we got to George Floyd, there were 30 different versions of and perspectives of what was going on. This case had so many different, like, there's not even an argument.
And it's still been but there is an argument. There's an argument being made. And the sad reality is that it's more than likely that he's going to get off.
I think in this time, he's not. And the only reason I said is
right.
Even based off of all of the evidence, but the case that the prosecution, the defense has tried to make is so obviously trying to deflect and get a mistrial and all. It was so obvious this time. You know, and in all the other cases, there wasn't a big they didn't have the case against the individual outside of what the story was. So in this case, they can clearly make him out to be a thief, a fraud, and an addict. But despite all three of those things, you still killed him for
Well,
no reason other than you were angry and you had venom and hate for this person. Like is they try to discredit this man from the grave so many different times, and that's why I'm loving the film. And it was crazy because one of the reasons I did not want to watch the George Floyd trial because we had just watched the O.J. Simpson trial, or in the movie we watched the
when the People versus OJ.
yeah, and one of the reasons I did not want to watch George Floyd's trial was because of that. That was one of the biggest because that was I remember running home from school, literally running from downtown, uptown, downtown to get home to watch the tail end of the trial. And I remember how, even the fact that he got off, it being such a relief, but the venom that had been transferred. I mean, even you could tell your teachers who believes he did it versus, especially if you had white teachers, you could tell the ones because they were a little bit more aggravated during that trial. So fast forward to where we are now with our art, then imitating what's going on. It's interesting. I think white people have learned a lesson and not to add themselves to the conversation. Because in all those instances, we watch them add themselves to the conversation, and this time, not so much. But this short film was interesting to me for so many different reasons. Because outside of this, even this the police case, it was the relationship between him and the lady, how men, are in relationships. It had so many different layers that were just crammed into this half an hour. That was just crazy to me. Was it anything that stuck out in this short film for you? Like what did you notice that wasn't so obvious?
What did I notice that wasn't so obvious?
I mean, outside of the relationship between the officer and the young man, but
I thought, I don't even think I thought about it that much. It wasn't really. It was a pretty straightforward piece of work with,
it was a lot packed into a half an hour.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could argue that. I was like, when I realized what it was about, I was like, I don't know. I was kind of, I think I was a little bit removed from it.
Did you think you knew what was going to happen, or
hell no,
okay.
no, I didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that coming. Although I wasn't surprised about it, I was more shocked that they made that decision as filmmakers, right?
Yeah,
I thought that was a very
to end it
bold.
that way.
I thought it was a very bold decision to end it like that. But I was also a little bit disappointed because I wanted to see Yo make it home. Like
He was so
the
close
one thing about this medium that we have the power to kind of change the narrative in the sense that we don't always have to see ourselves like losing.
But I think that
and while I understand that it resonates from a realistic perspective,
mhm,
when you think
mhm,
about what happens to a lot of young black men and women these days
yeah,
in those types of situations. We've talked about how, in the past episodes, we talked about art imitating life, but life
mhm,
also imitating art.
yeah,
And, I'd like, like I prefer to see
some more
us
optimism.
come out on top.
And
You know what I mean?
you know what?
And I had remembered thinking to myself, watching it, Nate was like, oh, he
Mhm.
gonna have to kill him.
Yeah,
But I remember him thinking that, and I
yeah,
remember thinking to myself, but if he does that, he'll break the loop, but his life is ruined now. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, now he's a cop killer, and we
Yeah.
know how that story ends.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And I think, you
Exactly.
know, I would think that most black people would probably think like that. Like halfway through it, after he done killed him for like the
Yeah. By the
60th
end of that
time,
movie,
it's
I
like,
think because I thought
he
it.
gonna have to kill, yo.
It was no. It was
He
two
gonna have to
thoughts.
drop him.
It was
But
two thoughts.
then
He
it's
had to
like,
either welcome him, bring him into the home.
mm-hmm,
Like I think that would have broke the cycle, or he had to kill her. And
right.
I'm not promoting cop killing, but I'm saying this film doesn't give you any
They
other
don't give you
option.
much options. So
But
when he
it,
decided to go talk to him and just initiate the conversation, I was like,
right,
oh, okay, this could work. This could work.
yeah.
But then, you know, racism, you know, that train's never late.
But you know what? And what you just said just now, I felt like that for a long time. With Obama becoming president, I wanted to see what else was possible. People bashing the Cosby Show. I wanted to see what was possible, not just what our reality was.
Mm,
Not to say what is possible hasn't been parts of our reality, but for the most part, it hasn't. And I wanted to see programming and content that spoke to what is possible. What are other choices? Because and I'm quite sure you speak to a lot of young people. You work in a middle school, so you hear this from a lot of, especially young men. They don't feel they have options. They really feel like their option is to do this or to do this.
mm-hmm,
If they can't be a football player, they gotta be a rapper. If they can't be a rapper, I'm gonna be a teacher. If I can't be a teacher, what else can I be?
mm-hmm,
A drug dealer. So they really feel like their options are very few. And for me, I always want to see stuff that has alternate endings to it, where but the reality of this particular type of program or content, it is it's the reality that many of us fear, but it's also like I saw it from a different perspective. Like he has to find a different way. And when he started to each time talk to him, um and which we thought was wearing him down, but until we realized he was in on it too,
mm-hmm,
and it felt like he was more comfortable with being in the loop than the other gentleman was. You
mm-hmm,
know, especially the way he brung it out in the ending. But this is a harsh reality that many of our young black people, not even young black people, have to face. And I think movies like this are less for us and more for them. And it wasn't until I saw this short film that was very apparent to me.
mm-hmm,
We want better endings for our own sanity, for our own reality. But these films are for people that don't look like us. It's for the
mm-hmm,
people who don't see the value in who we are, or think we're just a bunch of lazy bumps on a log that just want to get over and scam and get something for nothing. you know
mm-hmm,
your their actions are just as tied into the outcome as ours are.
mm,
So if we don't change and they don't change, nothing will ever change. But I think their fear is the change. They don't want it to change, so they're going to keep doing what they're doing, and we're trying to do something different. And because we're not all on the same page, it's going to keep having that same outcome. This film is, for as short as it was, and how it just dropped it in the middle of time like this. It was right on time for me. Like it was definitely something that gave me a little comic relief, but it was still like pushing a strong issue. you know it's not us. It's nothing we can do. We've tried to shapeshift ourselves and bend and flex and be a part and step and fetch. We've tried everything. It's not us. It is not on us to make this better.
that's
I
true.
think it's putting it in their hands. It's your responsibility. For over 500 years now, we've tried everything under the sun to get you to understand, to be friends with you, to make peace with you, to extend the olive branch. It's not us. It's not on us anymore. It's you. You need to take this to another level. But this film definitely did it for me. and on a humble, because I wasn't even gonna watch it, because when certain people suggest stuff to you, you be like, why do you want me to watch this? But it definitely did it for me. So I think that was it. Like for me, both of these pieces, and I'm only halfway through one of them. Really speaks to time being in this time warp, and it's just going in a circle. And I think
Mm-hmm.
both of them deal with that same premise of, we thought we were, past this, but we really not. Um, and I'm glad I kind of switched it today, because I would have been thinking about these two
Mm-hmm.
and not, you know, what we intended to talk about.
Yep.
So so I guess closes out. Closes
That
out.
closes out.
Closes
Y'all
out.
listening out there, tell us in the comments how you feel, particularly if you watch them, because I know that there's been a lot of hesitation for our people around watching it. So if you haven't watched it, if you don't plan on watching it, let it talk to us. Let us know why. Because I know we're gonna have a follow-up conversation once Nate has seen the
Mm-hmm.
the the rest of the series. So we may be able to include some of those comments and some of that commentary in our next episode. If you have seen it, tell us how you felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Also with Two Distant Strangers, if you've seen it, let us know. If you haven't and you don't plan on watching it, let us know. And we'll be back next week for the finale, right? Or was this the finale? No, we got
Uh,
one more show,
yeah.
right?
So we got one more show,
One more
and we
show for the
may we
second
may
season.
add a bonus episode to kind of summate shows like this, or anything that
Mm-hmm.
any loose ends that we have. So we do have one more episode, and we have a special guest host that's returning. It's in Blue Waters. And this isn't. It was when he saw it. It was the LGBTQ episode, but a lot of like groundbreaking, interesting, uh storytelling, and it's just a different show. It's not just one vein, but definitely tune in for that. Blue is definitely somebody who I like to hear what he has to think, because he's coming from the world of psychology, as well as the black experience. So his own black experience. And I'm just interested to hear what he thought about a number of these films. I'm interested to hear what George has to say about a number of these films. But nevertheless, we have one more episode to go. We'll have a special episode where we kind of summate this episode and some other things. And we're missing an episode 10, but it'll be uploaded soon. So stay tuned for that. And that'll be just another bonus episode. And then we have some special programming over the summer. And then we'll be back at the end of the summer with season 3 and the George G. Oliver takeover, which I
Yeah,
feel like I'm gonna
yeah,
watch a
yeah.
lot
I
of
see y'all back when we get back
animation.
from the summertime, because yeah, we're gonna have limited runs in the summer. We gonna be in these streets,
Right. So that's
in
it.
these vaccinated
These
streets.
vaccinated streets. That's not this test trial streets. That's what we have.
Right, the test trial streets. You
So peace
right.
out.
You
Peace
right.
out, everybody. Peace out. Peace out.
See y'all next week. Oh man.